Yo, what's good? Today, let's talk Johnny. Let's talk about this character. So he's a bit of a problem right now. So I wanted to examine some of the new stuff that he has, but also just to sort of discuss why this character is so much better than he was, and maybe identify that he's a bit of a problem. He might be a bit of a problem indeed. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So first of all, I want to start by saying that I actually think that Johnny was already solid. Like, he was quite underrated, in my opinion, last version. Had issues, struggle matchups, etc., and he has some of the same issues as he has before now. But as an overall matter, right, he had some really big strengths that were and are, I think, way underestimated. So let me just give one example of that. The most pertinent example I can give is meter gain on this character. So there's actually like a stat in this game that sort of affects meter gain and tension balance and like how much the game is going to give you for taking aggressive actions. That kind of varies by how the game passively judges whether or not you're being aggressive. And all of Johnny's moves tip him way toward the scale of the game thinking you're super aggressive. The effect is you get way more meter, basically. And his moves also just build more meter than other characters. So like, just for example, let's say you land a throw on Johnny. This is a very standard thing to do. You can see like very simple string. I'm nearly at 50 meter. Like, nearly at 50 meter, and of course, this is going to vary if they FD, whatever, but, like, that amount of meter gain is actually insane to take basically no risks at all during your string. Like, that is disgusting, and let's also not forget the fact that this character with meter is disgusting as well, because he's going to force a 50-50 with Vault, and not only that, kind of leads me right into my next strength that we're going to talk about here, which is this. Like, this is actually insane as well, by the way, because you're talking about like a half screen disjoint that hit confirmable on counter hit, right? And is going to get you corner or wall break from really, really far away. He's super plus, by the way, so that means that you're going to get your Oki with your card. And as I just showed, right, his Oki with the card is like disgusting. He gets like this kind of thing at absolute worst with the card. You're always going to be able to force 50-50. If you don't force 50-50, there's a very good chance that because you just got a knockdown, you're going to be able to build to enough meter to threaten the Vault deal 50-50 from there, right? Just insane. Just overall insane. Now, also something that's kind of underrated about this character, especially now, this was an issue he had before, conversion ability. We're talking like normal hits getting you a ton of shit, basically. Like this kind of thing is not happening with most other characters. Your disjoints giving you knockdowns from very, very far like that. Hit confirmable into Wild Assault, into Card Oki, into Build Meter, into 50-50, into etc, etc. It's like he really snowballs on himself more than he did before. But one thing that was already underrated is like how well he can threaten, kind of just converting off of any hit. And God's forbid that he gets like a counter hit with any of his Giga buttons here. Because again, conversion ability is insane. Actually insane. It comes down to whether or not the Johnnies are going to properly OS or not on their hit stop and go into Vault on counter hits. But like, even if they don't, Wild Assault, most other characters can't do this kind of thing. They can't convert like that, and he just can. He just can, and it's made way more consistent with the buffs, but again, already something that was very, very underrated from him before. Even his normal hits, right? He's getting wall breaks off of. Low commitment normal hits, and he's able to wall break. Something that's very strong about him. Now, something else that's quite strong about Johnny is that he is one of the best characters in the game at keeping the corner, because he can just reset with deal in the middle of his combos. Like if I, realize I don't want to break the wall, just do that, reset, build more meter. Yeah, I mean, it's just really insane because he can like end his combos early and keep the corner, right? Like that, you can see I'm +6, right? I can do an unthrowable close slash here, meaty, and I'm there with the card 50-50. If they get hit, he's just so well able to control his wall damage. and set up again with the card immediately, and again build a ton of meter. All his strengths kind of play into one another really, really well. Now, of course, he also has some pretty decent buttons in neutral. Like this 6K, insane, like I already mentioned, full combo, right? Just a insane threat here. You know, easy mid-screen wall breaks off of this. Plus in the air, you know, we've got, you know, let's take a look at some hitboxes here. We've got disjoints, right? They're not amazing disjoints, and that is still an issue with him, but 5H has been quite improved, as you can see, with the disjoint. 6H hits a little bit lower, it's also disjointed, but again, not an amazing poke. But the point being is, like, not that these are incredible buttons per se, but they are really, really, really high reward, especially because you can actually hit confirm this now, because you can do 2 hits into 5H. That used to really not combo consistently, right? I mean, it was already hit confirmable if you looked at the opponent's health bar. It was like 16, 17 frame hit confirm, which is within the realm of feasibility if you're looking at health bars, but the fact that this works so much more often now, or this especially, which used to just never work, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's really, really, really good. Let's address the elephant in the room. That would be his 15 frame dash, which gives this character ridiculous mobility, right? He already has an 18 frame total, 5 invuln backdash, very, very good distance on it, one of the most mobile backdashes in the game. He already got the momentum change to his dash, which means that he can, you know, super jump forward like it's nobody's business, etc. But on top of that, they just made it so he can fly across the screen now, and the effects of this are insane. Makes this unreactable, you know, stuff like this, unreactable. And in a vacuum, right, you can say, okay, those are risky options. You include the tech window, maybe it's reactable. I promise you, in reality, it's just not the case, because this character mental stacks you like crazy, because there's a lot of urgency to not let him do this in the middle of a block string. If you let him do that, he's going to build the 50 meter. Pretty much off of like one block string. If you let him get a reset with deal, he's going to build the 50 meter. He's going to mix you. He gets a high-low that he can wall break off of from almost anywhere with Wild Assault, or keep the corner in a very advantageous situation. And it's just like, it's really, really, really scary to deal with, right? So having that additional layer of offense with your dash, on top of just all the general utility that it gives you, is crazy. Now, not only that, he can do a bunch of new stuff off of this, right? Like a whole bunch of new stuff. And I'll show that in a little bit. And I'm sure not all of it has even been discovered as of yet. The Johnny Labbers are kind of menaces. And shout out to Aqua. I'll link their stuff in the description for giving me these clips. But, you know, you also have to contextualize this in the larger, you know, picture of what they're doing with this character, which is they just made it way too scary to guess on him. Way too scary. It used to be like, okay, if you're going to try doing this kind of thing, what they could do is basically just kind of fuzzy mash once you're at a certain spacing, or fuzzy 6p, because the threat when you're here is essentially gone. But now that you have counter hit misfire, right? Meterlessly in the corner, meterlessly. The threat is just so much higher. So much higher. You can see I'm plus 49 there. Guess what? That gives me time to do a perfectly meaty card, right? Because Finer is 15 startup, card is 32. So that means 47. We're getting a meaty card pop. And as I already showed, again, you get ridiculous meter from getting card pops in the middle of your pressure. Not only that, you know, you can threaten wall breaking if you like, anytime. All you need is Wild Assault. And of course, again, extremely confirmable into super. So like the threat of mashing against Johnny is like actually pretty minimal now, because of how well he can force you to hold his stuff. So like the overall picture of the character now is, okay, he's really, really good at forcing you to stay put. You really, really don't want to act out against this character. But on the other hand, if he forces you to stay put and he conditions you really, really hard not to do anything, well, then we get these resets going, this kind of thing. Couple of iterations of that and you're to 50 meter. Once he's to 50 meter, you go in very, very safely. Quite hard to contest for most characters, especially if you do have up close. And he's gonna do a 50-50 to you. Or potentially even more, you know, and start doing some really disgusting stuff that's been developed on this character over time. That's the other thing. Like, the character has been cooking for a while. He has a lot of setups that people are not aware of at all to exploit that mental stack factor that he can really perform on you. And it's gotten to a point where his offense has crossed the threshold of being like a little bit risky and problematic to now, because the risks that he takes are lower, or rather his risk reward is much better because the opponent gets punished a lot harder. Now he can use all the options that he has together to create kind of an insane mental stack that is extremely rewarding and really forces the opponent to guess early if they don't want to be put into a really bad situation like Vault. Now, of course, Vault itself is another huge strength of Johnny. This thing, I'm just going to say it is broken. It is straight up broken. And the reason why is because of this situation, right? On block, you can see I'm only -2. I'm out of throw range. And so that means that there's a very annoying RPS that the opponent has to play here, which is, do I press a light button immediately and force you to block? But then I'm committed to a string using lights. And so once I'm done, it's Johnny's turn again, and he has a card, and he has card. That means he's going to get 50 meter most likely. Most of the time, if he had any to start, he's going to mix me, and like the net result of that situation is really, really bad. And then there's the part of like, okay, well, Johnny just says F you. I actually don't care that I'm -2, and I'm going to force you to pick between these. And yeah, it's a little risky for me, but like maybe I'll get hit by a counter hit light, and maybe you're going to, you know, either die if I get like my 2p card pop, or give me a ton of meter, and then you're going to die. And it's like, for a move that is a neutral skip, with a character that can fly across the screen, with a character that can threaten half-screen wall breaks with disjoints that are incontestable and unpunishable, that is just like a really, really, really disgusting option to have. I can't stress it enough. You throw in the fact that if you're ever in the air, right, Johnny's in for free. Like, he's doing a 50-50 on the spot if you block this in the air, because he's plus, and then there's a card down. And it's like, oh my god, you can see that the neutral options really stack up. This character is terrifying in neutral now, and he just has things that are so hard to deal with, like Misfiner. How the hell is Kai supposed to contest this? Like, do a dipper in between? Yeah, it's -15, but let's turn on hitboxes, because they did buff the hitbox of K-Finer, for example. Look at that disjoint. He is not hitting that. Right? He just has to commit to something preemptive. And it's the same kind of story as how his pressure works. You have to commit to something preemptive. Like, if they're doing this kind of thing, you better pick an option, and you better be right. Because if you're not, he's going to build the 50 meter. He's going to Wild Assault. He's going to do whatever. And you're going to be stuck there. So one of the other really dumb things about Johnny, this patch, I should say, he still has Red Wild Assault. And this is still by far the best version of Wild Assault, especially now, like now that blue hasn't been changed and white is nerfed pretty significantly. Now this is just absolutely the best, and on a character that already builds a ton of meter, on a character that really, really benefits from it, you know, on his conversion. You know, just as an example, right? Red Wild Assault benefits this character enormously. It's just like, damn. It is so risky to press a button, because if I get counter hit by K-Finer, I'm going to the corner with card Oki, or I'm getting wall broken because of super, right? If I get hit by any button, I'm probably getting hit confirmed into 5H, into Wild Assault, into card Oki, or wall break, right? If I lose a 50-50, I'm getting Red Wild Assaulted, I'm going through the wall or to the corner with card Oki as well. And just everything adds up, because once you're in that situation, even if you defend perfectly, you still have to take a guess, essentially, because he's going to be pressuring you with stance cancels, with his super insanely strong spaced finers, the threat of counter hits, just his ability to enforce offense has gone through the roof. It's like night and day compared to pre-patch, because of some of these changes that make his conversions way more threatening, that make his pressure way more threatening, and that exploit existing issues with him, such as meterless conversions and meter gain. Now, another strength that he has as well is, I think that his defensive play is pretty solid now. His keep out, of course, but also he has the rare privilege of having, you know, hit confirmable mash, because you can 2-hit confirm or 3-hit confirm this, depending on spacing. But it combos into a hard knockdown, and that is not a common privilege whatsoever. Most characters cannot do that. And that is something that is a big plus. Also, just kind of the threat that he puts on you for his mashouts is really high, for all the reasons we've already outlined. That's something that is worth mentioning as well. And yeah, his backdash is insane. Like 18-5, and it goes super far. One of the best in the game, easily. Another underrated aspect of defense about him, if the opponent is a bit pushed out, right? This is a very, very good option out of the corner. You know, it's much faster than most other characters can get forward momentum in the air like that. Now that they changed it. And, you know, he can mix up his landings a little bit, that kind of thing. Double jump, threaten, you know, getting his turn started again immediately and that sort of thing. It's just, he has a lot of options, actually, on defense. Vaulting out of the corner, etc. Caravault even. Actually, this goes really, really far. Let me just show the difference. So I'll go full screen. This is a normal vault. And that's a Caravault. It's, yeah, pretty big difference indeed. Now, before I show some of the new stuff, I do also want to talk about Johnny's drawbacks, because he does still have issues, right? He's not a perfect character. He's not Leo or Sol. He doesn't have like or Mei, you know, a perfect kit, essentially. He does have issues, even though these strengths are extremely strong now. It is worth highlighting these problems. One of them, for example, is that a lot of his buttons, you know, they might be disjointed a little bit, but when you compare them to other disjoints, right, they might be good at stuffing buttons that aren't disjointed as well, but if you're fighting like Nago and Ram, this is not a good disjoint at all, because like your hurt box is very extended. It's only disjointed on the tip, and you're just going to be losing the button-to-button war of, you know, Nago 5H and your normals. Now, another issue with Johnny, high total duration on his buttons. So you can see 2S, for example, right? That's 36 total frames on whiff. Far slash here is going to be, what is that, 34, I think? And don't even get me started on his H buttons. These have horrendous total duration. So anytime you whiff buttons with Johnny, you're at a particular risk of getting whiff punished compared to other characters, right? And that is something that is certainly worth mentioning and is a drawback as well, right? And you can see the almighty 6K. This button is disgusting, but, you know, it's 37 total duration. That makes it easily whiff punishable on reaction. So they can't be throwing these things out for free, right? And the character is also not without risk. However, we already went over those risks are pretty strongly counterweighted by his strengths. Now, another issue that Johnny has now and has always had is going to be active frames. So you can see his far slash is only 3, 2S is only 3, 5H is 4, 6H is 2, which is just horrible. And so the result of this is, like, if you're running pressure like this, a lot of the time the opponent can still get away with kind of fuzzy backdashing, because the total duration on these buttons combined with the active frames means that you're not likely to hit them out of their backdash with the button because of the low active frames, and because of the total duration, when they backdash, oftentimes they're going to be plus, right? Like the recovery on all of these is, you know, well into the 20s. And, you know, even like his main pokes are going to end up leaving even heavies plus after backdash, you know? And that is not something that is ideal. It's partially mitigated by the fact that even if they backdash, you still have some strong ranged options. The finer change definitely helps a lot. But nonetheless, it is an issue that he has and has always had. And so because of that, that will mean that the Johnny probably wants to delay their Gatlings a little bit, as does any character, you know, just to, you know, throw in the mental stack of like, when am I going to cancel? When am I going to dash up and throw? When am I going to do that kind of thing? But it also opens him up to being quite 6P'able and susceptible to like fuzzy 6P, fuzzy mash on his pressure. He always has had that issue, and it can feel really, really bad once you actually do lose offense because of that, right? Now, this isn't really a drawback per se, but I will say that the character can be surprisingly technical. So, for example, this setup to get the plus 40 deal here is pretty difficult, right? But it is really, really strong because, of course, the other deal is 32 total. If I'm plus 40, that gives me time to gaplessly link into a close slash afterward. And so it's just much better for meter efficiency. Like, that setup is really, really good if you do get the plus 40 deal. But doing it from various spacings is pretty difficult, actually. It's very difficult. Like there, I almost had it. I was plus 6, which is good enough. But there's a lot of variance as to whether, you know, they're crouching, how you want to do this, whether they're FDing, if they're spaced out. For example, there's another way of doing it, like you don't get the first hit to hit, but you instead do deal as early as possible, and you kind of hold the finer after the fast RC. To do all this stuff correctly is very difficult. I want to stress that, right? Or this kind of setup that I showed before. Not easy at all, right? But if you do get it, huge reward. It's reversal safe, and you're safely building like 40 meter. So technicality is not necessarily a drawback. And I also want to say, even like a non-technical Johnny, you know, the ones that aren't doing any of this kind of thing, the Karas that he's got, perfectly valid, right? The character's layer 1 game plan now is just super strong. But you know, it's still worth mentioning that the character benefits a lot from optimals. He does end up with quite a few manual routes like that, because it's pretty much, you know, very damage optimal to do his loops. Very damage optimal to do 6H loops, but a lot of the time it's variable spacing as to, you know, whether or not you can get them, whether or not you do 2 6Hs or 1 6H and then a 2K 6K or 5K, whatever. Pretty hard to recognize and pretty important to do as well in order to maximize your mileage out of this guy. So worth mentioning for sure. So anyways, with all that being said, how good is the character actually? It remains to be seen, and there's a very good chance, I think, that he actually gets buffed again going into Season 4. Who knows how system mechanics will affect him. But the last thing I wanted to discuss about him and kind of how he is in this version is going to be with respect to the system mechanic changes. So Johnny is a character that would certainly, with these new tools, prefer to play neutral more. And even though he has solid defense, right, because of his mash threats, and, you know, he's got some decent buttons and ways to escape pressure, it's not anything amazing. And he can be put in ranges where it's kind of tough for him to contest. Like if he's sort of put at this kind of spacing outside of far slash and 2S range, his only real option is misfiner, and that's not something you want to be doing on defense. Because if you get counter hit in the corner here, or you get jumped in on, etc., you're going to be getting cooked. And he doesn't have a dash block, right? That's still a drawback. Even though this dash is worth the drawback of not having a dash block, that does not mean that not having a dash block doesn't matter. Man, that was a lot of negatives, but hopefully it was still comprehensible. It means that he can't, you know, take space when he's put in the corner like that at those kinds of spacings, and some characters can abuse that really hard, and that tends to be the ones that give him a hard time, like Nago and Ram. With all that being said, I think it's time to take a look at some of the new stuff that he can do. Again, shoutouts to Aqua for the footage. I do appreciate it. Please check out their stuff in the description below. Go to Johnny Labber. That's all for this one, fellas. Goodbye.